Welcome back to Blitz Fantasy Football. My name is Ryan Lickler, and today we are talking about the safest players in your fantasy football drafts that you need to be taking a look at this year. Ultimately, I think this is one of the better years in terms of finding value in those middle rounds of players that can provide consistent, safe, high floors that you don't have to worry about and rethink in your fantasy football drafts, and you can lock them into your lineups after drafting some high upside players who might be a little bit riskier throughout your draft. Now, I am not guaranteeing that any of these players are not going to get hurt or any freak accidents happen with these guys. I think these guys right now have incredibly high floors, and I don't see a lot of cases where they don't receive what we're expecting them to receive right now. And they could be a little bit of values right now in terms of ADP. So let's hop right into this list. And let's start with my first player. And it's going to be Caleb Johnson for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I tweeted about this yesterday, and I talked about how Caleb Johnson might just be the safest running back in drafts right now, currently going as the RB26 in terms of Fantasy Pro consensus rankings. I have a little bit higher than that on my list, but Caleb Johnson is coming from Iowa, where he had 1,500 rushing yards and 21 rushing touchdowns, ultimately improving his draft stock after having 2 years with not a lot of production in college. Now he heads to Pittsburgh, where we saw Najee Harris depart, and Najee, 4 straight years over 1,000 yards, was an RB2 almost every single season of his career in Pittsburgh. He had 1 year where he was an RB1 his rookie season, but after that point, Najee was locked in as an RB2. He wasn't the most efficient running back for Pittsburgh, as he ranked 138th last year in EPA, fantasy viable, averaging 12 points and totaling over 1,000 rushing yards. Now, another thing we have to be excited about is that Najee's now in Los Angeles. There's 263 touches that free up in Pittsburgh, and Caleb Johnson will be competing with Jalen Warren, who has a career high 120 touches, and then Kenneth Gainwell, who has a career high 87 touches. Caleb Johnson enters after a massive workload in his last year in college, but before that does not have a big workload attached to his name, but we saw him handle it last year. Both Warren and Kenneth Gainwell expect to be the receiving backs. And while I think Warren can be viable in PPR purposes because Aaron Rodgers loves to check it down, those early downs aren't necessarily his strong suit, as Warren has struggled efficiency wise in his career on those early down type of carries. Now, we know Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator for the Steelers, loves to run the football. Over the last 5 years, he's had two top three rushing units in the NFL between the Titans and the Falcons, and he's obviously been one of the higher guys in terms of run rates. Now, you enter in a bunch of opportunity, a safe floor, and early downs in a run heavy offense. And I think Caleb Johnson himself is a younger, faster, more explosive version of Najee Harris. And I think we're drafting him a little bit too low if we are considering him an RB3. I think he's a safe middle round RB2 with the expected work increase and his volume in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Our next player here, or next players, should I say, is second year wide receivers in the first 2 rounds. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey. All three of these players had breakout years last year and were much better heading into the 2025 season because they're heading into their second year. We saw Malik Neighbors had a little bit of bumps in the road. We saw Brian Thomas Jr. have a slow start to the season, but was on fire to end it. And then Ladd McConkey finally saw more volume down the stretch, becoming a true wide receiver one. All three of these players have wide receiver one upside, and they all are being drafted towards the end of the first and the second right now. And I think with all three of these players, despite different situations, they are the focal points of their offenses. We know that Ladd McConkey on any sort of passing down is getting the ball in a Chargers offense that doesn't have a playmaker outside of him. They are going to compete with touches with Will Disley, Mike Williams, and Trey Harris. And I don't necessarily see those guys, and sorry, Quentin Johnston too, but I don't see those guys being big time players taking away from Ladd McConkey when the Chargers do decide to pass. Malik Neighbors, he is the Giants offense. Let's just say that. Brian Dable is really good at finding a way to get his best receiver the ball, and we saw that last year. We've seen that during his time at Buffalo with Stephon Diggs. Brian Dable will get his best wide receiver the ball. Now, Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston, Tommy DeVito. I'm not even going to not mention him, but I think that one of those guys are going to find a way to consistently find Malik Neighbors because the scheme is built around him. And then Brian Thomas Jr., we all know that Liam Cohen is one of the most friendly coaches for wide receivers. We've coached with the Rams, he's coached with the Bucks, and we've all seen big wide receiver production from that position. Brian Thomas Jr.'s volume will even be better this season. And that's a scary thought. And I really like all three of these guys to make a big step forward in 2025. Our next player, we all know him, we all love him, and he is the MVP of the 2024 season. It's Josh Allen. He just might be the fantasy football MVP on a yearly basis. This guy is either the quarterback one or quarterback two almost every single season of his career, and he has great passing and rushing upside. And it's Josh Allen. Josh Allen right now is currently going at the end of second rounds, early third rounds right now in drafts, and his investment is worth it at that point. Now, Josh Allen is one of the highest players in terms of passing and rushing efficiency combined together, which is called EPX. He is always top three among that category. And Josh Allen is going to be basically any sort of fantasy proof that you can come because Josh Allen, one of the best passers in the NFL. Two, he runs the ball a ton. And three, guess what the Buffalo Bills run at the second highest rate? The tush push. Josh Allen has a consistent volume and floor on a weekly basis. And he's not just going to be a guy like Jalen Hurts who doesn't have a ton of passing volume and completely relies on tush push touchdowns to be one of the top quarterbacks in fantasy. Allen goes out there, slings the rock, and can put up a 45-point performance because he's that good. And Allen is going to be a player that goes and wins you weeks and just be that lock solid quarterback one that you need. And he is one of the players that I can justify completely revolving around a QB strong draft and having Josh Allen be either my second or third pick for my team. And it makes me feel really comfortable knowing the fact that on a weekly basis, my quarterback is going to be the best player in the fantasy matchup and could just win me that week alone. And that's what Josh Allen does year in and year out. He is one of the safest players in fantasy heading into 2025. The next player is a player that has been ascending over the last two seasons, and it is Trey McBride, tight end for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, McBride was one of the better tight end options in fantasy last season. He averaged 15.6 PPR points per game. He led all tight ends in targets with 147, and he had 111 catches with 902 air yards. Not only that, he had a 6.2 ADOT. He basically is the Arizona Cardinals system right now with Drew Petzing coming back as their offensive coordinator. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr., I do expect to take a step forward, but this Cardinals team's defense is very wildly inconsistent, and I think this passing offense for the Cardinals is a big focal point for them. Now, McBride was in a historic touchdown drought last season and found a way to get in the end zone towards the end of the last year. There is some positive regression to come from that. And with McBride's heavy target share and touchdown regression coming in a positive way in 2025, he is a can't miss pick right now in the early to middle half of that third round. And he is a guy that, no, I don't think Brock Bowers is going to be that end of the first, early second ADP type of guy that I like. I think Trey McBride is a much better value because his target share is probably going to remain the same because nothing has changed about his situation and his touchdown regression is going to go up compared to Brock Bowers, who gets a completely new offense, a quarterback who has never targeted tight ends before, and basically had really solid touchdown production and reception production last year that was very historic. Now, I really like McBride where he is, and I think he's a safe player. My final player is actually a teammate of Brock Bowers, and it's Jacobi Meyers. This player has made no sense for me in terms of where the experts are ranking him. They're ranking him outside of the wide receiver threes. And they are basically saying, hey, Jacobi Meyers, you had a career year last year. You've been a wide receiver two the last 2 years of your, NFL career with the Raiders, and you're just not good enough for us. We don't really like you. You're not flashy. You don't do anything well. And just like I mentioned, Geno Smith, guys, has never targeted the tight end position a lot. And the best wide receiver on this Raiders team is Jacobi Meyers. And Myers had a career year last year. We need to be valuing more towards that wide receiver two range. And he's only ascended every single year of his career. And I think he is a safe player that can get 85 catches for 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Last year, he did average 75.4 receiving yards per game, which was 13th among the NFL, while also having a 24.5% target share and only 4 touchdowns. This Raiders offense is going to be much better heading into the 2025 season. Jacobi Meyers will be a big beneficiary of that, and the Geno Smith edition only helps in as well. All in all, though, guys, these are my 5 players I am willing to bet are the safest picks right now in your fantasy football drafts. If you have any other players you think are safer than these guys, drop them down in the comment section below. Hit that subscribe button for more Blitz fantasy football content, and I'll catch you guys next time.